There's so many reasons why a young person might have gender distress. There can be contributors from, being same-sex attracted. Gay and lesbian kids go through a period of identity development that is different from a straight kid. And coming to terms with their sexual orientation is sometimes a process that takes years. Part of what can happen during that process is a sense of gender dysphoria that may be socially influenced, like it feels wrong to be a girl who's attracted to girls. So you think, gosh, it would be so much easier if I were a boy, or vice versa for young gay males. Trauma can contribute. Psychiatric problems like anxiety and depression can contribute. The way we experience distress is, I like to use the word protean, meaning it's kind of a shapeshifter. So psychological distress clearly is a universal part of being human, but how it gets expressed is mediated by the social environment. So there's a philosopher of medicine named Edward Shorter who came up with this idea of the symptom pool. And he said the symptom pool is those symptoms that at a given time in a given culture constitute acceptable symptoms that the rest of the society recognizes as legitimate. So when we're feeling distress, we want to pick something from the symptom pool that's going to receive recognition, that's going to be acknowledged as legitimate mental health issues so that we receive treatment, care, compassion. And right now, trans is in the symptom pool in a big way. So a young person experiencing distress for any reason might unconsciously pick up on trans as a way to express this distress. Doesn't mean the distress isn't real. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Doesn't mean they're faking it. It means they're experiencing distress, and that's sort of the way it's clothed in this moment of time. And just like 30 or 40 years ago, it might have been clothed differently. There was anorexia, there was cutting, now it's trans. Should be taken seriously, should be met with compassion, but should it be taken at face value and medicalized? I don't think so.
Every step that I took deeper into this subject made me realize just how dark and depressing it really is. The people who adhere to this ideology supposedly want to protect kids, and the way that they do that is by offering them a variety of medical interventions for psychological distress that will permanently alter their bodies, and often leave them sterile. When outsiders first hear about this, they refuse to believe that it's happening. But we do have some data on this. Komodo Health gathered data from health insurance claims showing an increase in kids being diagnosed with gender dysphoria. They also showed the number of kids under 18 who were put on puberty blockers, as well as the number of kids who've done hormone replacement therapy. Their data even show the number of top surgeries or double mastectomies performed on children. The numbers are very likely higher than that, given that people often crowdfund or simply pay out of pocket for some of these things. But it's just absolutely astonishing to me that we have doctors who think it's perfectly reasonable to cut healthy body parts off of children. Not only that, but they're not even considering the fact that we have something called rapid onset gender dysphoria, and that's when young people suddenly start identifying out of their birth sex without any previous signs of gender distress.
It's a description of a phenomenon that up until recently, up until about 10 years ago, there was two main types of people who had gender distress. Little boys who often turned out to be gay, these feminine little boys who frankly were treated very badly by society, and middle-aged males who often are kind of erotically driven to become a woman. It's called autogynephilia. And then out of nowhere, never before seen in the medical literature, a new cohort arrived, and it was mostly females. And they had often spent an extended period of time online, and they invariably had other mental health issues. So maybe it was anxiety, maybe it was an eating disorder or ADHD, very often autism. And these kids suddenly became transfixed by the idea of medical transition. And Lisa Littman let out a study in 2018, given about, I think it was 256 reports from parents of these children. And she coined the term rapid onset gender dysphoria. And that's the description of this new cohort.
If we look at the, quote, classic gender dysphoria, this is perhaps a young person who, from a very young age, has described like a feeling that they are the opposite sex or that they'd like to be the opposite sex. And I think some people might look at that and say, well, that's a pretty clear-cut case. But what we also know is that a large majority of those kids will move through it and outgrow their dysphoria through puberty. So even those are not clear-cut cases. And what we see with rapid onset gender dysphoria seems to be what I would view as like a combination between a psychogenic illness and a kind of social movement and a very common way that adolescents try to make sense of and identify what their distress means and how to get rid of it. So like the desire for adolescents to categorize what they're experiencing so they have some sort of a step-by-step process to move through it. So psychogenic illness is an illness that has kind of like very deep, distressing physical or psychological symptoms that doesn't have any concrete biological cause that we can identify. And other examples of psychogenic illness include things like a whole school of kids, for example, who believe that they have been poisoned and so they're all kind of getting sick and fainting and throwing up. Like this has been well documented to affect populations, particularly of young women. So what we call these conversion disorders. Psychogenic epidemics, psychogenic illness, and conversion disorders are all kind of based on the power of suggestion. And it's not that these young people are deliberately or consciously playing out the role. It feels really genuine and it feels truly authentic, but there is no biological cause. And in fact, when we look through the history of psychogenic illness and conversion disorders, a way that we bring those conditions to an end is to actually be vague about what it is, not to report on it too much, and to reduce the media exposure that young people have to those things. So it's very interesting that that social piece seems to be a big part of rapid onset gender dysphoria or sudden onset gender dysphoria, as well as what seems like a kind of social movement.